Marcus Chen pulled his thick jacket tighter around his body as the wind howled outside his research tent. The ice moon Kepler 442c was not a friendly place for humans. The temperature dropped to -60 degrees during the night, and even his best heating equipment worked hard to keep the tent warm. He had been alone on this frozen world for 3 weeks now. His job was simple: study the ice formations and look for signs of past life. The pay was good and Marcus liked working alone. He could focus on his research without other people bothering him. The storm had been going for 2 days now. Marcus checked his instruments and made notes in his computer. Everything looked normal. The wind speed was dropping, which meant the storm might end soon. He was looking forward to getting back outside and continuing his work. Then his alarm went off. Marcus looked at his security screen. Something had triggered the motion sensors around his camp. The sensors were set up in a circle around his tent to warn him if any dangerous ice shifts happened nearby. But this looked different. The readings showed something moving, something alive. That's impossible, Marcus said to himself. Nothing lives on this ice ball. He grabbed his flashlight and thermal scanner. The storm was still strong, but he had to check what triggered the alarm. Maybe it was just a large piece of ice blown by the wind. But the readings suggested something with body heat, and that made no sense. Marcus put on his heavy coat and boots. He checked his heater pack was working and stepped outside into the freezing wind. Snow hit his face like tiny needles. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him. Following the readings on his scanner, Marcus walked toward the edge of his camp. The wind was so loud he could not hear anything else. His flashlight beam cut through the swirling snow, but he saw nothing unusual at first. Then he found her. A figure lay collapsed in the snow about 50 meters from his tent. Marcus ran toward it, his boots slipping on the ice. As he got closer, his flashlight revealed something that made him stop and stare. The figure was definitely not human. She was about the same size as a human woman, but her skin was pale blue, almost white. Her arms and legs were longer than normal, and her fingers ended in what looked like small claws. But what really caught Marcus's attention were the faint glowing lines running along her arms and neck. They pulsed slowly like a heartbeat, giving off a soft blue light. She was unconscious and not moving. Snow was already covering her body. Marcus checked his thermal scanner. Her body temperature was dropping fast. Whatever she was dying from the cold. Marcus had 2 choices. He could leave her here and let the cold finish her off. After all, she was clearly an alien, and he had no idea if she was dangerous. His training told him to be careful with unknown life forms, but Marcus was also a scientist, and more importantly, he was human. He could not watch any living thing die in the snow when he might be able to help. He bent down and carefully lifted the alien woman. She was lighter than he expected, but her body was cold. Too cold. Marcus carried her back to his tent as quickly as he could manage in the storm. Inside his tent, Marcus laid her down on his spare sleeping bag. He turned up all his heaters and aimed them toward her. The glowing lines on her skin were getting dimmer, which worried him. Marcus had basic medical training, but he had no idea how alien biology worked. He did know that most life forms needed warmth to survive, so keeping her warm seemed like the right thing to do. Her breathing was slow but steady. Marcus watched the rise and fall of her chest and felt relieved that she was still alive. He wrapped her in thermal blankets and positioned his portable heaters around her. After an hour, her skin color improved slightly. The glowing lines became brighter, pulsing more regularly. Marcus took this as a good sign. He made some hot soup and sat down to wait and watch. The alien woman's eyes opened suddenly. They were large and completely black, with no visible pupils. Marcus froze, not sure what to do. She looked around the tent, taking in the heaters, the equipment, and finally focusing on Marcus. She tried to sit up but was still too weak. Marcus held up his hands in what he hoped was a peaceful gesture. "Easy," he said softly. "You're safe. I found you in the storm." The alien woman tilted her head, listening to his words. She said something in a language that sounded like music mixed with wind chimes. Marcus could not understand it, but her tone seemed calm, not threatening. Marcus reached for his translation device. It was a small computer that could analyze alien languages and try to find patterns. He had brought it just in case he found evidence of intelligent life, though he never expected to use it like this. He held the device between them and let it record her voice as she spoke again. The computer began processing the sounds, comparing them to known language patterns in its database. After a few minutes, words began appearing on the screen. Gratitude, warmth, safe. The translation was rough, but Marcus got the basic idea. She was thanking him. The alien woman pointed to herself and said something that the device translated as Lyralai. Marcus figured this was her name. Marcus, he said, pointing to himself. My name is Marcus. Lyralai repeated his name with a slight musical accent. Then she pointed to the heaters around her and said something longer. The translation device worked slowly, showing fragments. Heat, important. Danger. They find, Marcus frowned. Danger? What danger? Lyralai seemed frustrated that the translation was not working well. She pointed to the glowing lines on her arms, then to the heaters, then toward the ceiling of the tent. She kept repeating words that translated as track and follow. Marcus was starting to get worried. Was she saying that the heat from his equipment was somehow dangerous? Or that someone was tracking her? The translation device was improving as it learned more of her language, but it was still too slow. Lyralai tried to stand up, but she was still weak from the cold. Marcus helped her sit up properly. She looked directly into his eyes and spoke slowly, clearly trying to make him understand something important. The device translated, heat signature. They track heat. Danger comes. You help, but danger for you. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold outside. Someone was tracking heat signatures, and by helping her, he might have put himself in danger? Before he could ask more questions, Lyralai pointed to his computer equipment. The storm was clearing, and his communications array was starting to pick up signals from space. But these were not signals from Earth or any human source. Several large objects were moving toward the ice moon. Fast. Marcus looked at the readings, then at Lyralai. Her expression was a mixture of fear and guilt. Whatever was coming, she was responsible for leading them here, and Marcus was right in the middle of it. The glowing lines on her skin began pulsing faster like a racing heartbeat. Outside, the storm was ending, but Marcus had a feeling that his troubles were just beginning. Marcus stared at his computer screen. The signals were getting stronger. 3 large ships were heading straight for the ice moon. They would arrive in less than 6 hours. Lyralai was trying to explain something, but the translation device was still learning her language. Marcus caught fragments. My people, government, hunting, and escape. You're running away from them? Marcus asked, pointing to the screen showing the approaching ships. Lyralai nodded quickly. She pointed to herself, then made a gesture like running, then pointed to the ships on the screen. The meaning was clear enough. Marcus watched her more carefully now. During the day, her behavior had been strange. She kept moving closer to him, especially when he was near the heaters. At first, Marcus thought this was normal for her species. Maybe they were more comfortable with close contact than humans, but now he noticed other things. The glowing lines on her skin changed patterns when she was upset or excited. When she looked at his equipment, her expression showed surprise, as if she had not expected humans to have such technology. The translation device beeped. It had learned enough of her language to provide better translations. Tell me about your people, Marcus said slowly, hoping the device could translate his words for her. Lyralai listened to the translated version, then began speaking. Her voice was musical but serious. My people are called Zephyrians, the device translated. We are old. We have traveled between stars for thousands of your years. We have great knowledge and great power. Marcus nodded, encouraging her to continue. But we have a problem, Lyralai went on. Our bodies do not make heat like yours. We need heat from machines or from our world. Our world grows cold. Our machines need more power. We must find new sources of heat. This was starting to make sense to Marcus. Lyralai's people were cold-blooded like reptiles on Earth. They needed external heat sources to survive. And if their technology was failing, they would be desperate to find alternatives. What does this have to do with me? Marcus asked. Lyralai's expression became sad and guilty. I learned something terrible. My government found your species. They have been watching your world for many years. They discovered that humans make much heat, more than most species we know. Marcus felt a cold feeling in his stomach. What kind of watching? Secret watching. Ships that hide. Robots that look like rocks on your moon. They study how humans work, how much heat you make, how to capture you. The translation device was working better now. and Marcus could understand most of what Lyrelai was saying. What she told him next made his blood freeze. They call it the Heat Harvest Protocol. They plan to take many humans and use them as living heaters. They think humans are primitive animals, good only for making heat. Marcus stood up quickly, anger rising in his chest. They want to use us as batteries? Yes, Lyrelai said quietly. I was part of the science team studying your species. When I learned about the harvest plan, I tried to stop it. But the government decided I was a traitor. I stole the complete plans and escaped. She pointed to a small device attached to her arm, partly hidden by the glowing lines. But they put a tracker on me. It responds to heat. Every moment I stay near your warm machines, they can find me easier. Marcus looked at his heaters, then at the approaching ships on his screen. So by saving you, I've led them right here. Yes, Lyrelai said, and the guilt in her voice was clear even through the translation. I tried to leave many times today, but the storm was too strong. I would have died in the cold. Marcus sat back down, his mind racing. This was much bigger than just helping one alien. If what Lyrelai said was true, her people were planning to invade Earth and enslave humanity. And now they were coming here, probably expecting to find her and maybe learn more about human technology. These ships coming here, Marcus said. What will they do? They will search for me. They have powerful scanners that detect heat. They will find this place easily because of your machines. Lyrelai paused, then added, they will also scan you. They will learn about human heat generation. This will help them plan the harvest. Marcus felt trapped. If he turned off his heaters to hide, both he and Lyrelai would freeze to death. If he kept them on, the Zephyrians would find them and learn valuable information about humans. What weapons do they have? Marcus asked, very advanced. Energy weapons that can cut through metal like paper. Shields that stop most attacks. Ships that can destroy cities. Lyrelai looked at Marcus's equipment with what seemed like pity. Your technology is very primitive compared to ours. You cannot fight them. Marcus felt anger again. He did not like being called primitive, even if it might be true. Humans had worked hard to develop space travel and advanced computers. Maybe they were not as advanced as the Zephyrians, but they were not animals. Why should I trust you? Marcus asked. How do I know you're not lying? Maybe you're working with them and this is all a trick. Lyrelai understood his suspicion. She reached into a hidden pocket in her clothing and pulled out a small crystal device. She held it out to Marcus. This contains all the stolen data about the Heat Harvest Protocol. Battle plans, ship locations, information about your world. If I was working with them, why would I give this to you? Marcus took the crystal. It was warm to the touch and glowed softly. I don't have equipment that can read this. My translator can connect to it, Lyrelai said. She touched the device and new information appeared on Marcus's screen. What he saw made his heart race. Detailed maps of Earth. Population centers marked with numbers indicating heat generation potential. Plans for massive ships designed to hold thousands of humans. Scientific reports describing humans as optimal thermal generation units. The worst part was a timeline. The harvest was scheduled to begin in 2 years. The Zephyrians planned to make contact with Earth governments, pretending to offer trade and technology. While Earth's leaders were distracted by the promise of advanced technology, the Zephyrians would secretly begin taking people from remote areas. This is really happening, Marcus said, barely believing what he was seeing. Yes, Lyrelai replied. And now my people know someone is on this moon. They will investigate. If they capture you, they will learn much about human biology. It will help them improve their harvest plans. Marcus looked at the approaching ships again. 2 hours until they arrived. He was alone on an ice moon with an alien refugee, facing an invasion force with technology far beyond anything humans possessed. But Marcus was human, and humans did not give up easily. If the Zephyrians thought humans were just primitive animals, they were about to learn how wrong they were. Lyrelai, Marcus said, you know their technology and their plans. I know this moon and human engineering. Maybe together we can find a way to stop them. Lyrelai looked surprised. You want to fight them? They have ships that could destroy this entire moon. Marcus smiled grimly. They think we're primitive. Let's show them what primitive ingenuity can do. Marcus studied the data on his screen while Lyrelai explained more about Zephyrian technology. The approaching ships were massive, each one the size of a small city. They carried advanced scanning equipment that could detect heat signatures from orbit. Their scanners work by finding infrared radiation, Lyrelay explained. Any source of heat shows up like a bright light to them. Your research station produces a very strong heat signature. They will see it from very far away. Marcus nodded, understanding the problem. His generators, heaters, and computers all produced heat. On a frozen moon where nothing else was warm, his camp would stand out like a beacon. What about your tracker? Marcus asked, pointing to the device on Lyrelay's arm. It gets stronger when I am near heat sources, she said sadly. The more heat around me, the easier I am to find. But I cannot remove it. It is built into my body. Marcus examined the tracker more closely. It was integrated with Lyrelay's glowing skin markings, almost like it was part of her biology. But something about its design made him think. Lyrelay, you said your people need external heat to survive, right? Yes, our bodies cannot make heat like yours. We must use machines or live in very warm places. Marcus was beginning to understand something important. So your entire civilization depends on technology for basic survival? Yes, we have always been this way. It is why we became so advanced. We had to build better and better machines to live. This gave Marcus an idea, but he needed more information first. Tell me about your government. Who makes the decisions about the harvest? Lyrelay's expression became angry. The Thermal Council. They are the leaders of our civilization. They believe that cold-blooded species like us are superior. Because we do not waste energy making our own heat, they think warm-blooded species are inefficient and stupid. But if we're so stupid, why do they want to use us as heat sources? Because we are efficient at making heat, even if they think we are stupid at everything else. The Council sees humans as perfect biological machines, too primitive to be a threat but useful for producing heat. Marcus felt his anger growing. The Zephyrians saw humans as livestock, nothing more, but their arrogance might be their weakness. Lyrelay, does your technology work well in extreme cold? She looked confused by the question. What do you mean? I mean, if your equipment got very cold very quickly, would it still work? Lyrelay thought about this. Our technology is designed to work in controlled environments. We do not usually expose it to extreme temperature changes. Why do you ask? Marcus smiled. An idea was forming in his mind. Because I think your people have a weakness they don't know about. He pulled up information about the ice moon on his computer. This moon has very strange geology. The ice contains mineral compounds that react to heat in unusual ways. I've been studying them for weeks. Marcus showed Lyrelay his research data. When these minerals get heated quickly, they create a chain reaction. The heat spreads through the ice very fast, then disappears just as quickly. It creates false heat signatures that can fool even advanced sensors. Lyrelay studied the information. I have never seen anything like this. Our scientists did not detect these minerals when they surveyed this moon. That's because they only did quick scans looking for valuable resources. They didn't do detailed geological studies like I have. Marcus felt proud of his thorough research methods. But how does this help us? Lyrelay asked. Marcus pulled up a map of the moon's surface. I've identified 17 locations where these minerals are most concentrated. If we could create heat sources at all of these points, we could generate dozens of false readings. Your people's scanners would see heat signatures everywhere. That might confuse them for a while, Lyrelay agreed, but they will eventually realize the readings are false. Not if we do it right, Marcus said. And there's something else. I've been monitoring this moon's core temperature. It's unstable. The right kind of disturbance could cause a thermal eruption that would overwhelm any scanning system. Lyrelay looked worried. That sounds very dangerous. It is, Marcus admitted. But it's also our best chance. If we can create enough thermal chaos, your people won't be able to find us or get accurate readings about human heat generation. Marcus began outlining his plan. Using his portable equipment and some of Lyrelay's technology, they could create a network of false heat sources across the moon. The mineral reactions would make it impossible for the Zephyrians to distinguish between real and fake signatures. But we would need to move quickly, Marcus explained. And we would need to work together. I understand the moon's geology, but I need your knowledge of Zephyrian scanning systems. Lyrelay was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, you do not understand how powerful my people are. Even if we confuse their scanners, they have other weapons. They could simply destroy this entire moon if they become frustrated. Would they do that if they thought you were still here? No, Lyrelay admitted. They want me alive, and they want to study any humans they find. Marcus nodded. Then we have an advantage. They have to be careful. He began gathering his portable equipment. Emergency heaters, chemical heat packs, signal flares, and small explosive charges he used for ice sampling. Individually, none of these things were very impressive, but used cleverly, they might be enough. Lirelai, can you modify my equipment to work with your technology? She examined his devices. These are very simple, but yes, I can make improvements. Your chemical heating systems could be amplified using Zephyrian power coupling principles. As Lirelai worked on the equipment, Marcus studied the approaching ships, 1 hour until they arrived. He felt nervous but also excited. This was the biggest challenge of his life. Marcus, Lirelai said as she finished modifying the last device. Why are you doing this? You could turn me over to my people and save yourself. Marcus looked at her, surprised by the question. Because what they're planning is wrong, and because you risked everything to try to stop them. But I am not human. My people see your species as animals. Why do you care what happens to me? Marcus thought about this. Because that's what humans do. We help people who need help, even if they're different from us. Your people might see that as primitive, but I think it makes us stronger. Lirelai's glowing markings pulsed in a pattern Marcus had not seen before. She seemed moved by his words. Your species is not primitive, she said quietly. My people are wrong about that, but they are too proud to admit it. The first Zephyrian ship appeared on Marcus's scanners. Time to put their plan into action. Ready? Marcus asked, shouldering his pack of modified equipment. Ready, Lirelai replied. They stepped out into the cold night air. Above them, alien ships moved across the stars like dark clouds, but Marcus felt confident. The Zephyrians were about to learn that underestimating humans was a serious mistake. Marcus and Lirelai moved quickly across the ice toward the first mineral deposit. The Zephyrian ships were now visible as dark shapes against the stars, their engines glowing with cold blue light. How long before they start scanning? Marcus asked as they set up the first modified heater. Lirelai checked a device on her wrist. 10 minutes, maybe less. They will scan the entire moon surface first, looking for my heat signature. Marcus activated the heater and watched as Lirelai connected one of her small power cells to it. The device immediately began producing much more heat than normal, and the ice around it started glowing as the minerals reacted. It's working, Marcus said with satisfaction. The mineral reaction is spreading through the ice. They moved to the next location, working as fast as they could. Marcus had studied this moon for weeks, so he knew the terrain well. Even in the dark, he could find the best paths between mineral deposits. At the third location, Lirelai's device began beeping urgently. They are starting to scan, she said. I can feel my tracker responding. Marcus looked up at the ships. Beams of light were now moving across the moon's surface, and he could see the ice glowing wherever the scanners touched it. Are they detecting our false signals? Marcus asked. Lirelai smiled for the first time since he had found her. Yes, look at their scan pattern. They are confused. The readings show heat sources everywhere. The scanning beams were moving erratically now, jumping from one false signal to another. Marcus felt proud of his plan, but he knew this was just the beginning. We need to reach the large deposit near the moon's north pole, Marcus said. That's where we can create the biggest distraction. They moved quickly across the ice. Behind them, Marcus could see the Zephyrian ships changing position, trying to get better scanning angles. The aliens were clearly frustrated by all the false readings. When they reached the North Pole deposit, Marcus pulled out his most powerful equipment. Emergency flares, explosive charges for ice sampling, and his portable fusion heater, the device that powered his entire camp. This is dangerous, Marcus warned Lirelai. If we overload the mineral reaction here, it could cause a chain explosion across half the moon. Will it hurt us? Lirelai asked. I don't know, Marcus admitted. I've never tried anything like this before. Lirelai looked at the ships above them, then at Marcus. My people would never take such a risk. They would calculate everything perfectly before acting. Sometimes you don't have time for perfect calculations, Marcus said. Sometimes you have to trust your instincts and hope for the best. This was a very human way of thinking, and Marcus could see that Lirelai was beginning to understand how different humans were from her people. Marcus began setting up the charges, while Lirelai prepared her most powerful energy cells. The plan was to create a massive heat surge that would overload every scanner on the Zephyrian ships. Marcus, Lirelai said as she worked, I need to tell you something. Even if this works, my people will not give up. They will send more ships, better equipped ships. Then we'll deal with those ships when they come, Marcus replied. Right now, we focus on these ones. As they finished the setup, Marcus noticed that Lyra Lee's glowing markings were pulsing in a steady rhythm. She seemed calmer now, more focused. "You're different from what I expected," Lyra Lee said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "My people taught me that primitive species are driven only by fear and basic needs. But you are not afraid, even though you should be, and you are helping me even though it puts you in danger." Marcus thought about this as he connected the last explosive charge. Maybe we're not as primitive as your people think. Above them, the Zephyrian ships were moving closer. Their scanning beams were getting more intense, and Marcus could hear a low humming sound in the air. "They are getting frustrated," Lyra Lee observed. "They cannot get clear readings because of our false signals." "Good," Marcus said. "Frustrated enemies make mistakes." Marcus activated the timer on his charges. 30 seconds, he told Lyra Lee. "We need to get to cover." They ran toward a nearby ice ridge just as the first explosion went off. The flash of light was blinding, and the heat wave that followed made the air shimmer. Then the mineral reaction began. Marcus had seen small versions of this reaction during his research, but nothing like this. Lines of fire spread through the ice like lightning, racing across the moon's surface. Each line triggered more reactions, creating a web of heat that covered thousands of square kilometers. The effect on the Zephyrian scanners was immediate. Their beams began moving wildly, unable to process the overwhelming amount of thermal data. Alarms were probably going off on every ship. "Look," Lyra Lee said, pointing upward. The Zephyrian ships were backing away from the moon, their scanning beams shut off. Marcus could see small explosions on their hulls where the scanner equipment had overloaded. "We did it," Marcus said, hardly believing their success. "We actually did it." But Lyra Lee was not celebrating. She was watching her tracking device, and her expression was worried. "What's wrong?" Marcus asked. "The heat from the explosions has overcharged my tracker. It is sending out a very strong signal now. They may not be able to scan the moon, but they can still find me." Marcus felt his heart sink. Their plan had worked, but it had also made Lyra Lee easier to track. "How long before they locate you?" "Maybe an hour," Lyra Lee said. "The signal will get weaker as the heat fades, but they will have time to find the source." Marcus looked at the retreating ships, then at the still glowing ice around them. An idea began forming in his mind, but it was risky, maybe even crazy. "Lyra Lee, what would happen if your people lost their ships?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if their ships were damaged so badly they couldn't return home? Would they be stranded here?" Lyra Lee stared at him. "Yes, but their ships are heavily armored. Your weapons cannot damage them." Marcus smiled grimly. "Who said anything about weapons?" He pointed to the glowing ice beneath their feet. The mineral reactions were still spreading, creating underground channels of superheated gas and steam. "This moon is unstable now. All that heat energy has to go somewhere. If we could direct it upward toward the ships." "You want to turn the entire moon into a weapon?" Lyra Lee asked, her voice full of amazement and fear. "I want to turn it into a message," Marcus corrected. "A message that humans are not as helpless as your people think." Lyra Lee was quiet for a long moment, considering Marcus's plan. Finally she spoke. "It might work, but the energy release would be enormous. We might not survive it." Marcus looked up at the alien ships that wanted to enslave his species. "Then we better make sure we do this right." He began pulling out his remaining equipment. If they were going to send a message to the Zephyrian government, it was going to be one they would never forget. Marcus worked frantically with his remaining equipment, while the Zephyrian ships regrouped in orbit. The mineral reactions had damaged their scanners, but they were already deploying repair drones to fix the systems. "How much time do we have?" Marcus asked as he connected his portable fusion reactor to a series of heating elements. Lyra Lee monitored her people's communications through her translator device. 20 minutes before their scanners are repaired. "But Marcus, what you are planning is incredibly dangerous. The energy release could crack this moon in half." "Better than letting your people enslave humanity," Marcus replied grimly. He had positioned heating elements at key points around the large mineral deposit. The plan was to create a controlled explosion that would direct superheated gas and steam upward toward the ships. It was not quite turning the moon into a weapon, but it was close. "I need you to calculate the exact trajectory," Marcus told Lyra Lee. "Your people's math skills are better than mine." Lyra Lee used her technology to model the explosion. "If we trigger the reaction at the right moment, when the ships are directly overhead, the thermal column could reach them. But Marcus, this will destroy everything on the surface for kilometers around. Including us? Very likely, Lyrelai said quietly. Marcus paused in his work. He thought about his life back on Earth, his research, his family. Then he thought about the heat harvest protocol, and what would happen to humanity if the Zephyrians succeeded. At least we'll send a clear message, Marcus said. Your people will know that humans are not easy prey. Lyrelai watched him work with growing amazement. You are willing to die to protect people you will never meet? That's what humans do, Marcus said simply. We protect each other. As Marcus made the final connections, Lyrelai's tracker began beeping more rapidly. The Zephyrian ships were using it to triangulate her position. They have found us, Lyrelai announced. 3 ships are moving into position directly above us. Marcus looked up and saw the massive alien vessels descending through the atmosphere. Their hulls glowed with energy shields and weapons ports were opening along their sides. They are preparing to capture us, Lyrelai said. They will use stunning beams to knock us unconscious, then bring us aboard for questioning. Not if we trigger the explosion first, Marcus replied. He activated his fusion reactor and watched as the heating elements began glowing white-hot. The mineral deposits around them started reacting immediately. Lines of fire spread through the ice, but this time they were all flowing toward the central point where Marcus had placed his reactor. Energy is building underground, Lyrelai reported, watching her instruments. The reaction is much stronger than before. Above them, the lead Zephyrian ship extended a tractor beam, trying to pull them up toward its cargo bay. But Marcus had anchored himself and Lyrelai to the ice using climbing cables. Marcus, Lyrelai said urgently, I am receiving a communication from my ship commander. He is offering to spare your life if I surrender peacefully. What did you tell him? I told him that humans are not as primitive as we thought, and that he is about to learn why underestimating your species is a mistake. The energy building underground was becoming visible now. Cracks in the ice glowed with internal fire and steam was rising from the surface. The temperature around them was climbing rapidly. 10 seconds, Marcus announced, his hand on the final trigger. Whatever happens, Lyrelai, I want you to know that working with you has been an honor. For me as well, Marcus Chen of Earth, Lyrelai replied formally. Your courage has changed how I think about your species. Marcus pressed the trigger. The explosion was beyond anything he had imagined. The entire northern section of the moon erupted in a column of superheated gas and molten rock that reached into space like a fiery spear. The force threw Marcus and Lyrelai against their anchor cables, and the heat was so intense that their protective gear barely saved them. The thermal column struck the lead Zephyrian ship with the force of a natural disaster. Energy shields that could stop military weapons were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of superheated matter. The ship's hull cracked and its engines went offline. The other 2 ships tried to retreat, but the expanding shockwave caught them as well. Their advanced technology, designed to work in controlled environments, failed catastrophically when exposed to the chaotic energy of the eruption. Marcus watched through streaming eyes as all 3 Zephyrian vessels tumbled toward the moon's surface, their systems dead, their hulls breached in multiple places. When the explosion finally ended, the ice around Marcus and Lyrelai was completely melted. They found themselves on a small island of rock surrounded by steaming water. Both were burned and exhausted but alive. Is it over? Marcus asked weakly. Lyrelai checked her communication device. The ships are destroyed. My tracker is also destroyed. But Marcus, there are escape pods launching from the wreckage. Marcus saw the small craft rising from the crash sites. Some of the Zephyrians had survived. Will they try to continue the mission? No, Lyrelai said with certainty. They have no ships, no working scanners, and no way to call for help. They will focus on survival. She looked at Marcus with an expression he had never seen from her before. Complete respect. What you did here today will be remembered by my people for generations. You proved that humans are not primitive animals. You are dangerous when threatened, creative under pressure, and willing to sacrifice everything for your principles. Marcus managed a weak smile. Does this mean your people will cancel the heat harvest protocol? Lyrelai was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. I think so. The Thermal Council believes in superior technology and careful planning. What happened here proves that technology alone is not enough. Humans have something my people lack. What's that? The ability to do impossible things when you have no other choice. In the distance, Marcus could see the Zephyrian survivors setting up emergency shelters near their crashed ships. They would probably survive until rescue ships arrived, but their mission was definitely over. "Lyrelei," Marcus said, "what will you do now?" "I have a confession to make," she replied. "I am not just a refugee scientist. I am the daughter of the Thermal Council's leader. When I return home with the real story of what happened here, the Council will listen." Marcus stared at her. "Your alien royalty?" "Something like that. And I will make sure the Council understands that humans are not suitable for harvesting. You are too unpredictable, too dangerous, and too brave. It would be easier to find other heat sources than to fight a war against your species." Marcus felt relief wash over him. The immediate threat was over, and if Lyrelei was telling the truth, the long-term threat might be over too. "How will you get home?" Lyrelei smiled and pointed to a small section of intact ice nearby. "I have a concealed ship hidden under the surface. I was saving it for emergencies." As if on cue, the ice cracked and a sleek alien vessel rose from the water. It was small but clearly very advanced. "Will I see you again?" Marcus asked. "Perhaps," Lyrelei said. "But whether you see me or not, know this. Humans now have a friend among the Zephyrians. If your species ever needs an ally among the stars, remember my name." She climbed into her ship and activated the engines. Before leaving, she transmitted one final message to Marcus's communication system. "Thank you for showing me what courage looks like," the message said. "The universe is a better place with humans in it." Marcus watched her ship disappear into space, carrying with it the news that would save humanity from slavery. He was alone again on the ice moon, but somehow he did not feel alone. He activated his emergency beacon and waited for the rescue ship from Earth. When they asked him what had happened to cause such massive explosions on the moon's surface, he would tell them the truth. He would tell them that humanity had just passed its first test as a spacefaring species, and that in a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, sometimes the most powerful weapon was the willingness to do whatever it took to protect what mattered. The ice around Marcus began to refreeze as the thermal energy dissipated. But the warmth of human courage would burn on, a beacon that would be remembered across the stars.